The lecture hall buzzed with quiet chatter as students from dozens of species settled into their seats. Some sat on traditional chairs, others floated in gravity pods, and a few spread across specialized platforms designed for their unique anatomies. The Galactic Unity Academy prided itself on accommodating everyone, and Professor Tharn's xenobiology class was the most diverse on campus. Doyen adjusted his datapad and glanced at his sister Hyan, who sat 2 rows ahead. She was already fidgeting, clearly bored before the class even started. He smiled. Hyan had never been good at sitting still through lectures. Professor Tharn clicked into the room on 6 chitinous legs, his compound eyes scanning the assembled students. The elderly insectoid had taught at the academy for over 2 centuries, and his experience showed in every measured movement. He tapped a claw against the podium, and the holographic display flickered to life behind him. Today we discuss emergency medical protocols for different species, Professor Tharn announced, his translator converting his clicking language into something everyone could understand. Understanding each other's vulnerabilities is crucial for peaceful coexistence. The first hologram showed a Velcris, a species made of living crystal. Velthar, sitting near the window, straightened with pride as their species appeared on screen. The Velcris have crystalline structures, Professor Tharn explained. A crack can spread through their body in seconds. They require immediate stasis fields and molecular restructuring. Even minor impacts can be life-threatening. Next came Kix's species, the Blorans. The gelatinous student rippled with attention as their anatomy was displayed. Blorans have semi-permeable membranes. Punctures must be sealed within minutes or they lose essential fluids. They evolved in low-gravity environments and are extremely vulnerable to pressure changes. The professor cycled through a dozen more species, each with their specific weaknesses and medical needs. Then the human anatomy appeared on screen. The hologram showed a cross-section of human biology: bones, muscles, organs, blood vessels. Murmurs spread through the classroom. Humans, Professor Tharn said, pulling up several documents, have perhaps the most extensive medical documentation of any species. Observe their safety protocols. The screen filled with human warning labels, injury reports, safety regulations, and medical guidelines. Thousands of pages scrolled past. Humans require warning labels on hot beverages, the professor noted. They have entire institutions dedicated to workplace safety. Their medical facilities are vast and numerous. They document every injury, no matter how small. Velthar's crystalline form caught the light as they leaned toward their neighbor. The poor things must live in constant fear. Look at their anatomy, Kix burbled softly. Their vital organs are barely protected. Just soft tissue and thin skin, and those bones made of calcium deposits that can break under stress. Another student, a heavily armored Kresh, added, I heard humans avoid most of our physical training courses. They must know they're too fragile. Doyen heard all of this and bit back a laugh. He caught Hyan's eye. She was grinning, clearly thinking the same thing he was. Neither of them said anything. Sometimes it was better to let people believe what they wanted. Professor Tharn continued. Humans also have an elaborate pain response system. This suggests they experience significant suffering from injuries that other species might not even notice. How did they survive? Velthar asked genuinely. On their home planet, I mean. It sounds dangerous. Earth is classified as a Class 7 death world, Professor Tharn replied. High gravity, aggressive predators, extreme weather variations, and countless environmental hazards. It remains a mystery how such a fragile species achieved dominance there. Doyen finally spoke up. Professor, may I add something? Of course, Doyen. We're not as fragile as the documentation makes us seem. Those safety protocols exist for different reasons than you might think. Professor Tharn's antennae twitched with curiosity. Please explain. Humans heal, Doyen said simply. Most of those documented injuries weren't permanent. We keep records because we want to prevent injuries, not because each one is catastrophic. Velthar looked confused. Heal? You mean medical intervention? No, I mean our bodies repair themselves. Cuts seal up, bones fuse back together, bruises fade. It happens automatically. The classroom went silent. Several students exchanged glances that clearly said they thought Doyen was joking or exaggerating. That seems biologically improbable, Professor Tharn said carefully. Regeneration on that scale requires tremendous energy and specialized cellular structures. Humans eat a lot, Hyan called out from her seat. We need fuel for all that internal repair work. I've seen human students in the cafeteria, Kix admitted. I thought they were storing food for later like some hibernating species. You mean they consume that much regularly? Every day, Doyen confirmed. Multiple times a day. Professor Tharn made a note on his datapad. This is fascinating. We should explore this further. Perhaps a practical demonstration would be valuable. I'd volunteer, Hyan said immediately, but I don't want to hurt myself on purpose. Of course not, the professor assured her. We would never ask students to deliberately injure themselves. However, if any human students experience minor injuries during normal academy activities, perhaps they would consent to medical monitoring of the healing process. Sure, Doyun agreed. Though I should warn you, we heal pretty fast. You'll need to monitor closely or you might miss it. Velthar's voice held a note of concern. You say this as if injury is common for your species. It's not that it's common, Doyen tried to explain. It's that when it happens, it's usually not a big deal. We learn as kids that most injuries are temporary. Scraped knees, bumped heads, small cuts, they all go away on their own. That must be a strange way to grow up, Kix observed. Bloran children are kept in protective environments until their membranes fully mature. The idea of a child experiencing regular injuries sounds horrifying. Human children are basically designed to learn through trial and error, Jan added, which includes a lot of falling down and getting back up. Professor Tharn was clearly intrigued now. This explains some behavioral patterns we've observed. Human students do seem more willing to engage in physically risky activities. We assumed it was cultural bravado. It's more like calculated risk, Doyen said. We know that most minor injuries won't cause lasting damage, so we're willing to push ourselves physically. The rest of the class passed with more questions about human physiology. By the end, most alien students seemed split between fascination and disbelief. Some clearly thought the humans were exaggerating. Others looked at Doyen and Hyun with new concern, as if they were fragile creatures too brave for their own good. As students filed out of the lecture hall, Velthar approached the siblings carefully. I hope you don't take offense, the crystalline student said softly, but I worry about you both. If what you say is true about your healing, it sounds painful, having your body constantly repairing damage. Jan smiled warmly. It's sweet that you're worried. But honestly, we don't think about it much. It's just how we work. Still, Velthar insisted, please be careful. Even if you heal, that doesn't mean you should take unnecessary risks. After Velthar moved on, Jan turned to Doyun. They have no idea, do they? Not even close, Doyun replied. But they'll learn eventually. Think we'll get a chance to show them? At this academy? With all the physical activities available? Doyen laughed. Oh, I guarantee it. The academy's main arena gleamed under artificial lights that mimicked a dozen different home suns. Today was the Interspecies Gravity Ball Championship, and nearly every student had gathered to watch or participate. The game itself was simple in concept but difficult in execution. Teams tried to get a ball through floating hoops while gravity shifted unpredictably throughout the three-dimensional play space. Velthar suited up in the changing area, carefully attaching each piece of protective padding to their crystalline body. The padding was specially designed to absorb impacts without cracking the delicate crystal structure underneath. Even with all the protection, Velthar moved cautiously. One wrong collision could mean weeks in medical care. Ready? Kix oozed up beside them, their own protective membrane already in place. The Bloran had encased themselves in a transparent safety gel that would prevent punctures. As ready as I'll ever be, Velthar replied. I still think this game is too dangerous for most species. That's what makes it exciting, Kix said. Controlled danger. They moved into the arena where other team members were warming up. Doyen was there too, playing for a mixed species team. He wore a simple jersey and basic knee pads, nothing like the elaborate protective gear covering Velthar and Kix. Jan sat in the stands with other spectators, cheering loudly. Beside her was Jiwoo, the human athletic coordinator, a muscular woman with a whistle around her neck and an infectious enthusiasm for all sports. Your brother's team is going to crush them, Jiwoo said confidently. Doyen? He's good, but not that competitive. Now if I was playing... Jan grinned. The game began with a low-gravity phase. Players soared through the air in graceful arcs, passing the ball between them. Velthar actually excelled in low gravity, their crystalline form catching light beautifully as they glided toward a hoop. Then the gravity shifted to high G. Everyone dropped toward the floor suddenly. Most players were ready for it, but Velthar had been mid-jump. They came down hard, slamming into the padded wall at an awkward angle. The sound was distinct. A small crack, like ice breaking on a winter lake. Everything stopped immediately. Referees hit the emergency protocols. Medical drones swarmed into the arena within seconds. Velthar was gently lifted onto a hover stretcher, their left shoulder showing a hairline crack that glowed slightly from internal light. "I'm okay," Velthar tried to say, but the medical team wasn't taking chances. "Standard protocol," one of the medics explained. "Any structural damage requires immediate assessment and stabilization." The crowd watched in concerned silence as Velthar was transported to the medical bay. The game was suspended. An announcement explained that they would reschedule for the following week after ensuring all safety systems were functioning properly. Students dispersed, discussing what had happened. Most agreed the gravity shift had been too sudden. There were calls for better safety measures. That evening, the arena reopened for practice sessions. Different species had reserved time slots to train for various activities. The human students had booked the space from 7 to 9. Jan was finally getting her chance to play. She'd been itching to participate in the championship but had missed registration. Now she could at least practice with other humans. Jiwoo supervised, running them through drills and techniques. Several alien students remained in the observation deck, curious to watch humans at play. After the earlier accident, they wanted to see how the supposedly fragile species handled physical activity. Kix was among the observers, still shaken from seeing Velthar injured. They watched the humans zoom around the arena with what seemed like reckless abandon. No heavy protective gear, just basic clothing and minimal padding. "They're so fast," Kix murmured to a nearby creche student. "No protective shells weighing them down," the creche replied. "But one good hit and they'll be done for." They didn't have to wait long to see what happened when a human took a hit. Hyun went for an aggressive steal, lunging at full speed in medium gravity. She misjudged the distance. Her opponent dodged and Hyun couldn't stop her momentum. She crashed hard into a padded barrier, her right side taking the full impact. She bounced off and hit the floor, rolling twice before stopping. The alien observers gasped. Some reached for emergency alert buttons, but Jiwoo just blew her whistle. "Hyun, you okay?" Hyun lay there for a moment, catching her breath. Then she sat up, wincing. "Ow, yeah, give me a second." She examined her right ankle, which had twisted under her during the fall. Her hands were scraped and bleeding from trying to catch herself. A bruise was already forming on her shoulder. Doyen jogged over with a first aid kit. Not a medical team. Not emergency drones. Just a basic kit that students carried for minor issues. "Let me see," he said calmly, kneeling beside her. "Ankle's not broken," Hyun declared, rotating it slowly. "Hurts, though." "Probably sprained?" "Probably," Doyen agreed. He pulled out an instant cold pack, cracked it to activate the chemical reaction, and handed it to her. "Ice it." Next, he cleaned her scraped palms with antiseptic wipes. Hyun hissed at the sting but held still. The scrapes weren't deep, just surface damage where skin had torn against the floor. "Band-aids or leave it open?" Doyen asked. "Leave it. Heals faster with air." "Your call." Jiwoo walked over, hands on her hips. "That was a spectacular wipeout. 6 out of 10. You lost style points for the landing." "Thanks for the sympathy," Hyun shot back, but she was grinning. "Can you walk?" Hyun accepted Doyen's hand and pulled herself up. She tested the injured ankle carefully, putting weight on it gradually. It held, though she limped slightly. "Little bit," she said. "It's not that bad." "Sit out for 10 minutes, Jiwoo instructed. "Ice that ankle properly. If it swells up too much, we'll get it properly checked." "It won't swell that much," Jan said confidently. She limped to the sideline bench. Up in the observation deck, the alien students were stunned into silence. Finally, Kix spoke. "Should we alert the medical bay?" The creche students' mandibles clicked in confusion. I think she's fine, but how? That impact would have shattered half my shell plating." They watched as Hyun sat on the bench, holding ice to her ankle while chatting casually with another human player. After about 15 minutes, she stood up. She tested the ankle again, bouncing lightly on it, still limping but mobile. Then she walked back onto the court. "What is she doing?" Kix exclaimed. "She's injured!" But Hyun was playing again, though at reduced intensity. She avoided putting full weight on the injured ankle, compensating with her other leg. Her scraped hands left tiny smears of blood on the ball when she caught it, but she didn't seem to care. The practice session continued for another 40 minutes. By the end, Hyun was moving almost normally, though she still favored her good ankle slightly. When the humans finished and headed to the locker rooms, the alien observers rushed down to intercept them. Hyun, Kix called out. Shouldn't you be in the medical bay? For what? Hyun looked genuinely confused. Your ankle. Your hands. You were bleeding. Hyun glanced at her palms. The bleeding had stopped and the scrapes were already beginning to scab over. Oh, this? It's nothing serious. Just scrape the top layer of skin off. It'll be fine in a few days. A few days? Velthar had arrived from the medical bay, their shoulder now reinforced with crystalline resin. You'll be healed in a few days? Well, mostly healed. The ankle might take a week or two to get back to full strength. Depends on if it's a grade 1 or grade 2 sprain. I'll be in treatment for 6 weeks, Velthar said softly, and my injury was much smaller than yours. Hyun suddenly understood the confusion. Oh, you guys thought that was a serious injury? No, I just twisted my ankle and scraped my hands. Happens all the time in sports. All the time? The creche student sounded horrified. Sure, sports are rough. You fall, you get bruised, sometimes you sprain something. That's just part of playing hard. Jiwoo joined the conversation, slinging a towel around her neck. Anyone who does athletics long enough collects injuries. I've sprained both ankles, broken 3 fingers, torn a ligament in my knee, and had more bruises and scrapes than I can count. The alien student stared at her in shock. And you continued participating in sports? Kix asked. After all that damage? Of course. Once everything healed, I was good to go again. Well, except the knee. That one took surgery and physical therapy, but even that only sidelined me for about 4 months. 4 months for a major injury? Velthar's voice was faint. That seems impossibly fast, Doyen spoke up. That's what we were trying to explain in class. Human bodies are built to take damage and repair it. We have accelerated healing compared to most species here. This is insane, the creche muttered. Your species is insane, or just really hard to kill, Hyun said cheerfully. Earth wasn't exactly a gentle place to evolve. The alien students left, their minds reeling with what they'd witnessed. In one evening, they'd seen a human take an impact that should have required hospitalization, treat it with ice and some cleaning wipes, and return to activity within minutes. Everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong. News traveled fast at the Galactic Unity Academy. By the next morning, everyone had heard about Hyun's crash and her impossibly quick recovery. Students who hadn't been there demanded to see proof. Those who had witnessed it firsthand struggled to explain what they'd seen. Doyen found himself surrounded in the common area by a cluster of curious and concerned alien students. Velthar, Kix, and several others had apparently spent the entire night researching human biology. And they had questions. We need to understand, Velthar said urgently, displaying a datapad filled with human anatomical diagrams. We looked up everything we could find about your species and frankly we're terrified for you. Terrified? Doyen raised an eyebrow. Your internal organs are just sitting there, Kix burbled, wobbling with agitation. No protective shells, no redundant systems, no crystalline structures. Just soft tissue and thin skin. How do you survive? A small crowd was gathering now, other students curious about the discussion. Doyen sighed and gestured for everyone to sit. This was going to take a while to explain. Okay, let me try to break this down. Yes, human bodies are soft compared to species with exoskeletons or crystalline structures, but that softness is actually an advantage in some ways. We're flexible. We can absorb impacts without shattering. But the damage, the creche student insisted. We saw Hyun bleeding. Blood is your transport fluid, correct? Losing it should be catastrophic. We have about 5 liters of blood in our bodies, Doyen explained. Hyun lost maybe a few drops from those scrapes. That's nothing. And even if we lost more, our bodies would make more blood to replace it. We produce millions of new blood cells every second. The alien students exchanged glances. Every second? That seemed impossibly energy-intensive. Let's start with the basics, Doyen said, pulling up his own datapad. Human healing happens in stages. When skin gets cut like Hyun's hands, several things happen immediately. He showed them a medical diagram. First, blood vessels at the wound site constrict to reduce blood flow. Then platelets in the blood start clumping together to form a plug. Within seconds, a protein called fibrin creates a mesh over the wound. That's the clot. It seals the injury and stops the bleeding. That fast? Kix seemed doubtful. That fast. I can show you if you want. A simple finger prick will demonstrate. No, Several students said at once. Velthar held up a crystalline hand. Please don't injure yourself on purpose. We believe you. Continue explaining. After the clot forms, white blood cells arrive at the wound site. These are immune cells that fight off any bacteria or foreign matter that might have entered through the cut. They're like tiny warriors patrolling inside our bodies. You have warriors inside you? A small, timid species from a peaceful world looked genuinely frightened by this concept. Well, cells. Microscopic cells? They attack and destroy harmful bacteria and viruses constantly. Every day, all day, there's basically a war happening inside every human body. That sounds exhausting, Kix observed. It takes energy, sure. That's part of why we eat so much. But it means minor infections that might kill other species are just temporarily inconvenient for humans. Our immune system usually handles it. Doyen continued with his explanation, showing diagrams of wound healing. After a day or two, new skin cells start forming at the wound site. The edges of the cut pull together. New blood vessels grow into the healing tissue. Eventually, the scab falls off and there's new skin underneath. Sometimes you can't even tell there was an injury. How long does this process take? Velthar asked. For a shallow scrape like Hyon had? Maybe a week for complete healing. Deeper cuts take longer. It depends on the severity and location. A week, Velthar repeated quietly. My shoulder will take 6 weeks with medical intervention, and that's considered fast for my species. Another student, one of the floating gas bag species, spoke up in their breathy voice. What about bones? We heard human bones can break. They can, Doyen confirmed. But they also heal. When a bone breaks, the body immediately starts repairing it. Blood clots form around the fracture. Then special cells called osteoblasts start building new bone tissue. Over weeks or months, the bone fuses back together. And it's as strong as before? Kix asked skeptically. Actually, the healed section is often stronger than the original bone. The body overcompensates during repair. This caused a stir among the students. Stronger? That made no sense. Damage should weaken a structure, not strengthen it. I know it sounds strange, Doyen said, but that's how human biology works. We're built to take damage and bounce back. Our whole evolutionary history was about surviving injuries long enough to reproduce and raise children. At that moment, Hyon limped into the common area. Her ankle was wrapped in a compression bandage, but she was walking without assistance. She waved at the group. Hey, is this the anatomy discussion? Did I miss anything good? Hyon, Velthar called out. How is your ankle today? Better. Still sore, but the swelling went down overnight. I can put weight on it now. She demonstrated by standing on her injured leg. She wobbled a bit but stayed upright. Give it another few days and I'll be back to normal. Can we see your hands? Kix asked. Hyon held out her palms. The scrapes from yesterday had dried into dark red scabs. The skin around them looked pink but healthy, see? Already sealing up. The scabs will fall off in a few days and there'll be fresh skin underneath. The alien students leaned in to examine the healing wounds. It was remarkable. Less than 24 hours ago, these had been open injuries. Now they were clearly in the process of closing. A new voice joined the conversation. Mind if I contribute? Everyone turned to see Minho approaching. He was a human student specializing in emergency medicine, and he'd heard about the discussion through the campus network. Please do, Doyen said gratefully. Having someone with actual medical training would help clarify things. Minho sat down and pulled up a holographic display. I think what's confusing everyone is that you're comparing human healing to your own species' experiences. But humans evolved on Earth, which was not a gentle planet. He showed images of Earth, vast oceans, towering mountains, dense jungles, frozen tundras, scorching deserts. Earth has extreme environmental variation, predators everywhere. Diseases, parasites, poisonous plants, dangerous weather. Humans didn't become the dominant species by being fragile. We became dominant by being incredibly hard to kill. But you seem so vulnerable, Velthar protested, gesturing at the human anatomy diagram still displayed on Doyen's datapad. We are vulnerable to major trauma, Minho acknowledged. A human hit by a high-speed vehicle will die. A human who falls from a great height will die. We're not invincible, but for minor and moderate injuries, we have remarkable recovery abilities. He changed the hologram to show human evolutionary history. Our ancestors were persistence hunters. We would chase prey animals for hours, sometimes days, until they collapsed from exhaustion. We could do this because we could keep going even when injured. A twisted ankle wouldn't stop an early human from finishing the hunt. They'd push through the pain because survival depended on it. That's horrifying. Kix said quietly. That's evolution, Minho replied. Species adapt to their environment. Yours evolved in low gravity with specific threats. Humans evolved to endure and outlast. We developed high pain tolerance, fast healing, and the ability to function while injured. Hyun sat down, stretching out her injured leg. It's not that we don't feel pain. That crash yesterday hurt a lot, but I knew from experience that the pain would fade and the injury would heal, so I iced it, rested a bit, and kept going at a reduced level. You said you knew from experience, Velthar noted. That implies you've been injured before. Of course. Everyone has. I've sprained my ankles before. I've had worse scrapes than this. I broke my arm when I was 10. All kids get hurt sometimes. Children? The timid species looked faint. Human children experience broken bones? Sometimes, Hyun said with a shrug. Kids fall out of trees, crash their bikes, play too rough. Most childhood injuries are minor, but yeah, broken bones happen, they heal. You move on, Minho added. Human children are actually designed to learn through physical trial and error. They're born with soft bones that harden over time. This allows them to survive falls and impacts that would kill a juvenile of many species. As they grow, their bones strengthen, and they learn what their bodies can handle. The alien students were processing a completely different understanding of humans now. Not fragile beings living in fear, but incredibly resilient creatures who could afford to take risks because their bodies would repair the damage. The safety protocols we saw in Professor Tharn's class, Velthar said slowly, those aren't because humans are fragile. They're because humans need reminders not to be reckless. Exactly, Minho confirmed. If we didn't have safety rules, humans would take too many risks. We evolved to push through injuries, which means we sometimes underestimate danger. The protocols exist to protect us from ourselves. Kix wobbled thoughtfully. So when we thought we were being sympathetic to weak, fearful humans, we were actually looking at predators who evolved to shrug off injuries and keep hunting. I wouldn't say predators, Doyen objected. We're omnivores and modern humans are generally peaceful. But the capability is there, Velthar observed. Professor Tharn's xenobiology lab was packed with students and faculty members. Word of the planned demonstration had spread across the entire academy, and everyone wanted to witness human healing firsthand. The room buzzed with anticipation and nervous energy. The lab itself was a marvel of medical technology. Scanning equipment from a dozen different species lined the walls, each designed to measure biological processes in different ways. Holographic displays floated above workstations, ready to show real-time data. In the center of it all sat a simple examination chair. This is extraordinary interest, Professor Tharn clicked, his antennae waving in what might have been pleasure or concern. I want to remind everyone that this is a scientific observation, not entertainment. We will be monitoring the human healing process under controlled, ethical conditions. Beside him stood Dr. Kess, a visiting physician from a species with 7 eyes arranged in a circle around their head. Dr. Kess specialized in cross-species medicine and had volunteered to oversee the medical aspects of the demonstration. Safety is our priority, Dr. Kess said, their multiple eyes scanning the room. The injury will be minimal, sterile, and carefully monitored. We have emergency medical capabilities standing by, though I'm told we won't need them. Yoonji stepped forward from the small group of human volunteers. She was a biochemistry student, calm and collected, perfect for this kind of demonstration. She'd done plenty of lab work and wasn't squeamish about needles or minor procedures. Ready when you are, she said, settling into the examination chair. Dr. Kess positioned various scanning devices around Yoonji's arm, thermal scanners, cellular monitors, chemical analyzers, and equipment whose functions most students didn't understand. Everything would record data throughout the healing process. We'll make a small incision on the forearm, Dr. Kess explained, approximately 2 centimeters long and 3 millimeters deep. This will penetrate the skin layers but avoid major blood vessels and nerves. For reference, this level of injury would be immediately fatal to 17 of the species present in this room. Nervous murmurs rippled through the audience. Velthar, sitting in the front row with Kix, felt their crystalline structure vibrate with anxiety. Even knowing this was safe, watching someone be deliberately injured felt wrong. Dr. Kess prepared the sterile surgical tool, a small laser scalpel that would make a clean cut. They swabbed Yoonji's forearm with antiseptic and marked the incision site. Any questions before we begin? Professor Tharn asked. Will it hurt? Someone called out from the back. Yoonji answered herself. Yes, it'll hurt. Skin has nerve endings that register pain, but it's not unbearable, like a deep paper cut. And you're willing to experience this pain voluntarily? Kix asked, clearly struggling with the concept. For science? Sure, besides, it'll stop hurting pretty quickly once my body starts healing. Dr. Kess made the incision. A clean line appeared on Yoonji's forearm, and blood immediately welled up from the cut. Several students gasped. Some looked away. Yoonji winced but remained still. Yep, that stings. Beginning monitoring now, Dr. Kess announced. The holographic displays sprang to life with data. Thermal cameras showed heat patterns in the wound area. Cellular scanners tracked individual cells responding to the injury. Chemical analyzers measured proteins and compounds being released into the bloodstream. Observe, Professor Tharn narrated, pointing to the displays. Within seconds of the injury, blood vessels at the wound site are constricting. This is an automatic response to minimize blood loss. On the screen, tiny blood vessels visible under high magnification were indeed narrowing, reducing flow to the damaged area. Now watch the blood itself, Dr. Kess added. Those cell clusters forming in the wound are platelets. They're clumping together to create a plug. The cellular scanner showed hundreds of platelets swarming to the injury site, sticking to each other and to the damaged tissue. It looked almost like tiny soldiers forming a defensive wall. Fibrin proteins are being deployed, Professor Tharn continued. These will create a mesh structure that reinforces the platelet plug. The chemical analyzer highlighted specific protein markers spiking in concentration. On another screen, the mesh began forming, a microscopic net across the wound that would harden into a scab. How long has it been? Felthar asked quietly. 90 seconds, Dr. Kess replied. 90 seconds. In 90 seconds, the bleeding had already slowed to a trickle. The wound, which had seemed horrifying moments ago, was visibly beginning to seal itself. The immune response is initiating. Professor Tharn pointed to a new set of data. White blood cells are being drawn to the wound site. Watch the thermal signature. The thermal camera showed increased heat around the injury as blood flow brought immune cells to the area. Yoonji's body was mobilizing its defenses against potential infection. This is the inflammatory phase, Dr. Kess explained. It will last for the next few hours. The area will become slightly swollen and red as the immune system clears debris and guards against pathogens. Minho, standing near the front, raised his hand. Can I add context? Please, Professor Tharn invited. What you're seeing is a coordinated response involving billions of cells. White blood cells are essentially hunting for any bacteria or foreign material that entered through the cut. They'll destroy threats and then die, becoming part of the material that eventually gets cleared away. Meanwhile, other cells are already preparing for the next phase of healing. What's the next phase? Asked a student from a silicon-based species. Proliferation, Yoonji answered, her voice steady despite having an open wound. New skin cells will start growing to close the gap. That starts in a few hours and continues for several days. Dr. Kess carefully dabbed away the excess blood to give everyone a clearer view. The wound was already beginning to look less severe. The edges were drawing together slightly and the active bleeding had stopped. We'll continue monitoring, Professor Tharn said. But this initial response is what I wanted you all to see. The speed and efficiency of human clotting and immune activation. The demonstration continued with regular updates over the next several hours. Students filtered in and out of the lab between classes to check the progress. Each time the wound looked better. By hour 6, the inflammatory phase was in full effect. The area around the cut was slightly red and warm to the touch, but Yoonji reported only minor discomfort. The wound itself had sealed with an early scab forming. The swelling will peak soon and then start decreasing, Dr. Kess noted. New blood vessels are forming in the wound bed to support tissue growth. By the end of the first day, the transformation was remarkable. What had been an open injury that morning was now a thin line covered by a dark scab. Thermal scans showed the inflammatory response was calming down. Cellular activity remained high but was shifting from defense to construction. The proliferation phase has begun, Minho explained to a fresh group of observers. Under that scab, new skin cells called keratinocytes are multiplying and migrating across the wound. They're literally filling in the gap. On day 3, Unji returned to the lab for another scan. The scab was still present but beginning to lift at the edges. When Dr. Kess carefully removed it for examination, new pink skin was visible underneath. That's incredible, Velthar whispered. The wound is almost gone. The new skin is still fragile, Dr. Kess cautioned. It will take another week for it to fully mature and match the surrounding tissue in strength. But structurally, the injury is healed. How does it feel? Kix asked Yunji. Itchy, honestly. That's normal for healing wounds. The nerve endings are reconnecting and the new skin is still sensitive. But it doesn't hurt anymore. By day 7, the demonstration concluded with a final scan. The wound site showed only slightly pink skin that was rapidly normalizing in color. Cellular analysis confirmed that the new tissue was fully integrated with the surrounding skin. In another week, even the color difference would fade. To summarize, Professor Tharn addressed the assembled students and faculty. We have observed a human healing from a significant injury in 7 days. The body's autonomous response required no medical intervention beyond basic cleaning. The human in question experienced no lasting damage and is now fully functional. For comparison, Dr. Kess added, a similar injury in a Velcris would require immediate stasis and crystalline reconstruction over 6 weeks. For a Bloran, membrane rupture would need emergency sealing and regenerative treatments for 3 weeks. Many species represented here would consider such an injury life-threatening without immediate medical care. The implications hung heavy in the room. Humans weren't just slightly tougher than other species. They were operating on an entirely different biological level. I have a question. Velthar stood up. This is remarkable, but I'm trying to understand the limitations. You said humans can die from major trauma. Where is the line? What injuries can humans not recover from? Minho considered the question. That's complex. Generally, humans can heal from anything that doesn't destroy vital organs or cause death through blood loss, infection, or shock. We can survive losing entire limbs if medical care is provided quickly enough. We can recover from severe burns, multiple fractures, and massive tissue damage. But if the brain or heart is severely damaged, or if we lose too much blood too fast, we die like anyone else.